Um, so what do you think it is about this country that gets to people where they want to keep coming back?
You know, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, and I'm not going to talk like a white man now, for me, there's a spirit here that kept drawing me back. After I got out of active scouting, and we'd take a vacation, we'd always come west, and we'd always wind up in Cimarron. It was like something that I can't explain was pulling me back. So for me, there's a spirit here that tells me, this is where you belong. Yeah, and I've always, and I'd known for a long time that I wanted to live here.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had to wait till I could retire before I did it.
Yeah.
You know. And I'm sure it was an act of God. Because as you know, we are Christian people.
Mm-hmm.
But we came here, Baby and I, in '81. I had retired in the spring of that year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I worked at a tourist trap in North Carolina with my Indian thing and had a pretty good season, and so we came out to visit. And I had my application in at Philmont for a job. And so went out there one day, and Paul Clausen was a head honcho out there at that time. And
Mm-hmm.
we talked a while, and he said, well, Buddy, he said, I still got your application. He said, but there's nothing open right now. I said, well, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I was in town, and just thought I'd check with you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on the way back, the house right across from the St. James Hotel, Mr. Otto Powell lived there. And he was the one that was running the museum for the CS. And we had met him a couple of years before. So we stopped and howdied with him, and it took a little while for him. He said, oh yeah, I said, I remember you. He said, you were a friend of Fred Lambert's. And I said, yeah. So in our conversation, Mr. Powell said, well, Bud, what are you doing now? I said, well, I just recently retired. And I never will forget. He clapped his hands. He said, you're just what I'm looking for. I want to quit. I'm going to tell the boss about you. Well, this was in the middle of the week, and the mill wasn't, the museum wasn't open.
Mm-hmm.
But he had an exhibit up there he wanted me to see. And he said, let's go up. He said, I want you to see this. Because I told him I'd never seen it. A sample blanket that the Navajos use, you know. So we went up, and it was on the second floor. And so we went up, and I got a good look at it and appreciated it. Then we heard footsteps coming up the stairs. Mr. Powell said, I wonder who that is. It was Les Davis. And we were introduced.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Powell said, Les, he says, I think this man would be a good replacement. He says, I want to leave. He says, I'm 84 years old. He says, I want to quit. So Les talked to me a little bit, and we went downstairs. And we were standing out by the front gate still talking about it. And he said, well, he said, I said something about, well, we'd have to think about it because we'd have to have a place to live. And he said, you live in that little house right down there.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to him. He said, okay. He says, I think I found my man. Will you take the job? And this was 20 or 30 minutes after I met him.
Yeah.
We shook hands. We moved here. We arrived in Cimarron on April 19th of 1982. And I stayed with the CS for 25 years. Mm-hmm. Never worked for a better man. And of course, working there, eventually I got involved in Philmont. This was great.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I got to work with the kids, you know. And a lot of the staff, permanent staff, got to know me.
Mm-hmm. People
like Doug, you know,
sure.
And all that. And of course Paul Clausen and some of the others. But I got to work with the Ranger Department. I worked with them for over 20 years,
mm-hmm.
you know. And at first I'd go out there and talk to them. And finally, I forget who it was, one of the pros asked me, he says, could you have these kids at the museum sometime after hours? I said, yeah, that'd be great. So we did. They'd bust them out, and I'd open up till 6:30, 7 o'clock. I'd give them a short talk, turn them loose in the museum. Mm-hmm. They'd be there till 9 or 9:30. And all summer, we'd keep coming back, you know. Mm-hmm. And I think that was about the most, how can I put this? I think that was the most productive thing I did for the Boy Scouts of America in my whole career.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to touch all these rangers. Every ranger got to touch I don't know how many people through the summer. I did that for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
200 times 20. Mark, that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. Yeah.
And it was great. And